Hello aviators, welcome to AlphaToSky. In this video, we will look into Articles 29 to 42 of the Chicago Convention, which is a very essential part of air regulations for every pilot. Let's dive in and get started. Article 29 talks about the documents carried in an aircraft. First is the certificate of registration for that aircraft, in which country it is registered, on what date it was registered, and it is owned by whom. So those information are present in the certificate of registration. Certificate of airworthiness of that particular aircraft, which certifies whether the aircraft is still airworthy and fit to fly. Appropriate licenses of each crew member. Aircraft journey logbook. The journey logbook contains the aircraft details, its registration mark, aircraft type, the serial number, the operator and the owner. And it contains the flight crew details, names and signatures of the pilots, the crew duty assignments, the flight information, which is the date of flight, departure and destination, the flight time, right? The journey details, number of passengers, cargo details, and all those things. And it also contains the aircraft status, technical status of the aircraft. It has the reports of any defects or malfunctions during the flight and maintenance actions, and also the flight purposes, which is commercial or training or ferry flights. And so these information are available in the aircraft journey logbook. Aircraft radio station license if equipped. So if that particular aircraft contains radio station, radio equipment, then we need the license for those equipments. We need the list of passengers with their source and destination. And finally, the cargo manifest and declaration if it is carrying cargo. Right. We'll start with the certificate of registration, which looks something like this. Right. Some of the information has been hidden for obvious reasons, but this is a sample. Right. So this certificate includes the proof of nationality and ownership of that aircraft. It is issued by national authority, like DGCA. It has certain important details like the registration mark, the manufacturer and model, serial number, owner's name and address. So a proof of nationality, it officially shows which country the aircraft belongs to and who owns it. It is issued by the national authority. In India, it is issued by DGCA. Right? It must be on board. It is non-transferable, and it cancels on deregistration. Right? So if the registration of an aircraft has to change from one country to another, then the previous registration must be deregistered. We talked about this in the previous video. You can have a look if you haven't already. Next, the certificate of airworthiness. This contains the registration mark, manufacturer and model, manufacturer's serial number, the aircraft type or category of that aircraft, the owner's name and address, date of issue, validity, and things like that. Right. So this is the certificate which states that the aircraft is certified to fly or not. Is it fit to fly or not? Then we have the crew licenses. Each license contains the title and issuing authority, the license number, type of license, and the validity of these licenses. And to give you an idea of how important the crew license is, I have an article, a news from this business line. I'll be pasting the link in the description. You can read more about it. But yeah, this is an article, a news, where a trainee pilot was paired with a non-training captain for this particular flight, and that costed a heavy amount for the airline. Right? So that is how important the crew licenses is. Next we have Article 30, which is the aircraft radio equipment licenses. So aircraft should carry radio licenses in accordance with the regulations of the registration country. So all these licenses must be in accordance with the registration country, the rules of the registration country. And all these radio equipments should only be used by the crew members, and license should be as per the state of registration, which is what we read. Article 31 talks about certificates of airworthiness. We saw a sample of the certificate of airworthiness. All international aircrafts should carry a valid certificate of airworthiness with them, issued by the country of registration. Article 32, licenses of personnel. So every crew member needs to have a valid license and certificate of competency. And every country has the right to accept or reject licenses and certificates issued by other countries. Now this is very important because as we know, every country has the sovereignty over their airspace, so they can put their own rules and regulations on their airspace. So because of that, they can accept or reject such licenses or certificates. But then if they are part of the international aviation, then they have to follow certain guidelines mentioned by the ICAO, and thus they have to mention the reason why they cannot accept such licenses. Article 33, so recognition of certificates and licenses. A country should accept the license provided by another country if it meets the minimum standards set by the Chicago Convention. So Chicago Convention has set some guidelines for these licenses and certificates. So if the license and certificate of a particular country meets the minimum standards of these guidelines, then the other countries must accept these licenses and certificates. This applies to all the aircraft involved in international flights. And domestic flights are always governed by the national aviation laws and authorities. So these rules are only applicable to the international flights. Article 34 talks about the journey logbooks. So international aircraft should carry a journey logbook. This logbook should include details about the aircraft, the crew, and each flight. The format and details to be included will follow the rules set by the Chicago Convention. And this is a mandatory record keeping requirement for international operations. Article 35 talks about the cargo restrictions. An aircraft is not allowed to carry weapons of war or any items that a country has banned from being transported. So if an aircraft is flying into a country and that country has certain bans on these items, then that particular aircraft is not allowed to carry this cargo. Article 36, photographic apparatus. Any participating country may prohibit or regulate the use of photographic apparatus in an aircraft over its territory. So they can put specific rules and restrictions on photography from an aircraft, right? They can prohibit photography in a particular area of that country in their territory, specifically the military areas or any such area can be prohibited by the participating country. Now then these articles, the upcoming articles, they talk about the international standards and recommended practices. Starting with Article 37, adoption of international standards and procedures. Right. So till now, the articles that we saw, all those rules, every contracting state shall collaborate, improve, and bring their regulations, standards, procedures, and organizations as close as possible to the international standards. So the articles that we saw previously are all international standards. So every participating country should bring their rules as close as possible to these standards so that the international aviation is smooth and without confusion. And ICAO helps by creating standards and recommendations. So all these articles, all the standard rules and recommendations have been created by the ICAO, and other countries are expected to follow and bring their rules close to the standards. Article 38, departure from international standards and procedures. Now, what if a country cannot follow a particular rule or a particular standard that has been mentioned by the ICAO, right? So there is a provision for that. If a participating country deviates from the standards and procedures mentioned by the ICAO, it should inform ICAO, and ICAO will inform the other countries about the deviations. Now, there can be several reasons why a country might deviate from the international standards and procedures, right? For the first one could be it is very difficult for that country to follow that standard procedure or rule, right? In that case, the country has to inform ICAO. And in the second one, the country might want to do things differently from that mentioned in the standards, right? In that case also the country has to inform ICAO, like what are the differences they want to implement, right? So the ICAO informs the other countries about it. And the third one, the country might not be able to follow a particular version of that standard or procedure, right? An updated version of that standard or procedure. So in that case, the country has to inform ICAO within 60 days of the adoption of this rule. So those are some of the rules, some of the provisions that the countries can use if they are not able to follow the guidelines mentioned by ICAO for some reason. Article 39, endorsements of certificates and licenses. This is very important. So aircraft certificate or personal license not satisfying international requirements should get endorsement. So sometimes these certificates may not align with international requirement, and in those cases these certificates or licenses can still be granted but should include a special note called an endorsement, right? This note, the endorsement, it clearly mentions that these specific requirements were not met by that particular aircraft or the person, and it helps the authorities understand the limitations and differences, right? And then if that aircraft and that person is flying to another country, they have clear idea about what are the standards that were not met, and it gives an option to them whether they are going to accept or not these licenses and certificates. Article 40, validity of endorsed certificates and licenses. If an aircraft or person has a certificate or license with an endorsement, they cannot fly internationally unless they get permission from the country they want to enter. So if they want to enter a different country, and that country is okay with the endorsements, with the limitations of these certificates, then they are allowed to enter. But by default, they are not allowed to fly internationally to other countries. And all these limitations that the licenses have should be updated, should be communicated clearly to the other country. Article 41, recognition of existing standards of airworthiness. These rules do not apply to the aircrafts or equipment for which the prototype has been submitted before 3 years from the date of adoption of the international standard for that equipment. So all these rules that we discussed, the validity of certificates, licenses and things, these rules do not apply to the aircrafts or equipments whose prototype was submitted 3 years from the date of adoption of these standards, right? When these standards were applied from that date, 3 years. So within that range, whatever prototypes were submitted, these rules are not applicable to them. Similarly, Article 42 talks about recognition of existing standards of competency of personnel or the licenses. So these rules are not applicable to those personnel who got their license before 1 year from the date of adoption of these standards. But after 5 years, the new rules are applicable to everyone. So if you got your license within 1 year from the date of adoption of these rules, it is not applicable to you. All these rules are not applicable to you. But then after 5 years, this is applicable to everyone. irrespective of when they got their licenses. If you want to understand the other articles in the Chicago Convention, I will leave a link in the description to the entire playlist where we understand the articles and then solve a few questions on those articles. It will be really helpful to have a good understanding of those articles. Right? You can also go through the playlist for entire air regulations that will be covering all the conventions and other topics for the exams. So that was it. We covered many important articles in this video, and some of them were quite complex. We will make it simple by solving a few questions in the next video. Hopefully that will give you a clear understanding. So till now, if you like the video, do like and subscribe. And remember, your wings already exist, but all you have to do is fly. Thank you.